He gazed at the man seated on the park bench and perceived only a thug. He noticed the hoodie, the skin color, and, in his mind, a target. What Sergeant Wayne Collier failed to see was the Navy Cross etched in the man's heroic history, the scars from multiple tours in Afghanistan, or the reality that he was tangling with one of the deadliest, most disciplined men on the planet. This officer believed he was the hunter, yet he was soon to discover he had become the prey. Here is the tale of how a power-hungry cop publicly harassed a Navy SEAL commander and the devastating karma that stripped him of everything he held dear. The morning air in the affluent suburb of Oak Haven felt crisp, carrying faint hints of freshly cut grass and expensive espresso. It was a town where the lawns were manicured to perfection and the neighbors watched one another through parted blinds. Darius Freeman sat on a wrought iron bench in the center of Liberty Park, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand. At 34, Darius possessed a kind of stillness that made people uneasy, though they rarely understood why. He did not fidget. He did not check his phone constantly. He simply sat there, watching the world with eyes that had witnessed far too much of it burn. He wore comfortable clothes for his morning off, a charcoal gray hoodie, loose-fitting joggers, and worn running shoes. To the untrained eye, he appeared like a drifter or someone who had just rolled out of bed. To a trained eye, the way his feet planted firmly on the ground and his head swiveled with subtle precision would have signaled an operator. Darius was a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, a SEAL with Team 6. He was currently on mandatory leave following a high-stakes mission in the Horn of Africa that had gone dangerously sideways before turning right. He had come to Oak Haven to meet an old friend and mentor, Admiral Gregory Harlan, who had retired to this quiet enclave. They were scheduled to meet that morning. It was nearly time. Darius took a sip of his coffee, savoring the rare anonymity. For the first time in months, no one was shooting at him, and no one required him to make a life-or-death decision. Yet peace, for men like Darius, often proved a cruel mirage. Across the street, a patrol cruiser rolled to a stop at the red light. The vehicle, emblazoned with the Oak Haven Police Department insignia, gleamed in the sunlight. Behind the wheel sat Sergeant Wayne Collier. Collier was a longtime veteran of the force, but not the kind anyone celebrated. He was the sort of cop who had peaked in high school and now wielded the badge to recapture that fleeting sense of dominance. He had a thick neck, a buzz cut losing its battle against a receding hairline, and a record of excessive force complaints that the local police union had conveniently buried. Collier scanned the park. This was his town, his territory. He liked to keep it clean. His eyes swept over the young mothers pushing strollers, the elderly couple feeding pigeons, and then locked onto Darius. Collier's brow furrowed. A black man in a hoodie loitering in his park, in this neighborhood. The light turned green, but Collier did not accelerate. He flicked on his turn signal and pulled the cruiser up to the curb right in front of the park entrance. Darius noticed the move. He did not react physically. He did not stiffen or flinch, but his internal threat level shifted from green to yellow. He took another sip of coffee, his eyes tracking the officer as the heavy car door swung open. Collier adjusted his utility belt, hitching up his pants. He slipped on his sunglasses, even though the park lay shaded by large oak trees. It was a power move. He wanted to appear as faceless authority. He began the long walk toward the bench. Darius sighed inwardly. Here we go, he thought. Just stay polite. To escalate. Do not let the demon out. Sergeant Collier stopped about 5 feet from the bench. He stood with his feet planted wide, thumbs hooked near his belt buckle, close to his holstered sidearm. It was an aggressive stance meant to intimidate. Darius did not look up right away. He slowly lowered his coffee cup to his knee, keeping every movement deliberate. Then he raised his head and offered a polite, though weary, nod. "Morning, officer," Darius said. His voice was a deep baritone, calm and steady like a tranquil ocean. Collier did not return the greeting. He chewed gum with his mouth open, staring down through his aviators. "You live around here?" Collier asked. It was not a question. It was an accusation. I'm visiting, Darius replied simply. Visiting who? A friend. Collier scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. A friend. Right. Does this friend have a name or an address? Darius looked the officer squarely in the eye. He does. But I am not sure why that is relevant, officer. I am just drinking my coffee. Collier took a step closer, invading personal space with calculated intent. It is relevant because I know everyone in this town, and I do not know you. We have had a lot of break-ins lately, shady characters hanging around parks, casing houses. I am not casing houses, Darius said, his voice remaining level. I am waiting for my meeting. In a hoodie. In the middle of a workday. You got a job, pal. Darius smiled faintly. It was the smile of a man who knew he could dismantle the person before him in seconds flat but chose not to. I have a job. I am on leave. Let me see some ID. Collier demanded, extending a hand. Darius paused. He knew the law. He knew his rights. Oakhaven was not a stop and identify jurisdiction unless there existed reasonable suspicion of a crime. Sitting on a bench drinking coffee was not a crime. Officer, Darius said, am I being detained? Have I committed a crime? Collier's face flushed a deep crimson. The veins in his thick neck bulged. He was not used to hearing no. He was used to fear. He was used to submission. I asked you for ID. Collier barked, his voice rising and causing a young mother nearby to gather her children and hurry away. Now hand it over, or we are going to have a problem. I do not have a problem, officer, Darius said, setting his coffee cup down on the bench beside him. I am asking for the articulate reason for your stop. If I am not being detained, I would prefer to finish my coffee in peace. Collier removed his sunglasses. His eyes were small, beady, and full of hate. You want to play lawyer? Okay, we can play. Stand up. I am comfortable here. I said stand up, Collier shouted, his hand dropping to rest on the grip of his taser. The shouting drew attention. Oakhaven was a quiet town. Raised voices were a novelty. Across the street, a man walking a golden retriever stopped to watch. Two teenagers on skateboards paused, sensing the tension, and instinctively pulled out their smartphones. Collier saw the phones. Usually this would make a cop cautious. For Collier, it only fueled his ego. He wanted an audience. He wanted to show these rich suburbanites that he was the sheepdog protecting them from the wolf, even if the wolf was merely a man enjoying morning coffee. I am going to ask you one last time, Collier hissed, leaning in so close that Darius could smell the stale tobacco and peppermint on his breath. ID now, or I put you in cuffs for failure to comply and resisting an officer. Darius assessed the tactical situation. Collier was unhinged. If Darius reached for his wallet, Collier might claim he was reaching for a weapon. If he did not, Collier would get physical. Officer, Darius said, his voice dropping an octave and growing colder, you are making a mistake. I suggest you take a step back and reassess the situation. My ID is in my back pocket. I am happy to show it to you if you can articulate a crime. But I am telling you now, if you put your hands on me, you will regret it. Not physically, I will not hurt you, but professionally. You are about to end your career. Collier laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. My career. You think you can touch me? I am the law here, boy. Collier lunged. He did not go for the handcuffs. He went for a dominance display. He grabbed the front of Darius's hoodie, intending to yank him off the bench. It was like trying to uproot an oak tree. Darius did not budge. His core engaged, rooting him to the steel bench. Collier tugged, stumbled, and lost his balance for a split second. Darius's hand moved with lightning speed, not to strike but to control. He clamped his hand over Collier's wrist, the one clutching his hoodie. Let go, Darius commanded. It was not a request. Collier panicked. The strength in Darius's grip was terrifying. It felt like a hydraulic press. Collier realized instantly that he was not dealing with a vagrant, but his pride would not let him retreat. "Get your hands off a police officer," Collier screamed. He used his free hand to rip his taser from its holster. Taser, taser. The crackle of electricity sparked in the air. The crowd gasped. The teenagers were filming live now. Darius released Collier's wrist and raised his hands slowly, palms open. He knew that if he fought back now, he would be shot. He had to endure the indignity to win the war. "I am complying," Darius said clearly for the cameras. "I am unarmed. I am complying." Collier, breathing heavily, aimed the taser at Darius's chest. "Get on the ground, face down, hands behind your back. Do it now." Darius slowly moved off the bench. He went to his knees, then to his stomach. The pavement was cold. He crossed his ankles and placed his hands behind his back, interlocked. It was standard POW posture. Collier jammed a knee into Darius's back harder than necessary, driving the air from his lungs. He slapped the cuffs on, ratcheting them tight enough to cut off circulation. "Got you now," Collier whispered in Darius's ear. "Resisting arrest, assault on an officer, disorderly conduct. You are going away for a long time." Collier hauled Darius to his feet. Darius stood tall, his face a mask of stone. He did not look defeated. He looked like a king in chains. "Check my back pocket," Darius said calmly. "My wallet is there. My military ID is inside." "Military ID?" Collier laughed. "What? You and the ROTC? Stolen valor." Collier reached into Darius's back pocket and fished out the leather wallet. He flipped it open. He froze. He was not looking at a standard driver's license. He was looking at a CAC card, a common access card. But it was not just any CAC. Alongside it was a folded laminated card that usually accompanied high-level clearance. And tucked behind the plastic was a picture of Darius shaking hands with the President of the United States, wearing a dress uniform heavy with medals. Collier stared at the ID. "Lieutenant Commander, U.S. Navy. So you are a sailor," Collier sneered, trying to recover his bravado. "Does not give you the right to disobey a lawful order. Look at the other card, Sergeant," Darius said. Collier squinted. He pulled out the second card. It was a card listing emergency contacts. The first name on the list was not a wife or a mother. It read Gregory Harlan, Admiral, retired, USN, followed by a direct line to the Pentagon's JAG office. Collier's stomach did a slow, sickening flip, but he was too deep in. The crowd was watching. He could not simply uncuff him and say sorry. He had to double down. He had to make the charges stick to justify the force. "I do not care who you know," Collier said, shoving the wallet into his own pocket. "You are going to the station." Suddenly a sleek black sedan with tinted windows screeched to a halt behind Collier's cruiser. The door flew open. A man in his 60s with silver hair and a posture forged from steel stepped out. He wore a casual polo but carried himself with an air of absolute command. It was Admiral Gregory Harlan. "What in God's name do you think you are doing to my commander?" the Admiral roared, his voice booming across the park. Sergeant Collier turned to face the older man. He did not recognize Admiral Harlan. To Collier, this was just another entitled senior citizen interfering with police business. "Step back, sir," Collier warned, his hand drifting toward his baton. "This is an active crime scene. Interfere and you will join him in the back of the car." Admiral Gregory Harlan did not flinch. He walked right up to Collier, invading the officer's personal space with the confidence of a man who had stared down Soviet destroyers during the Cold War. "I am Admiral Gregory Harlan, United States Navy, retired," he announced, his voice cutting through the humid air like a knife. "And the man you have in handcuffs is Lieutenant Commander Darius Freeman, a decorated Navy SEAL. You have exactly 10 seconds to take those cuffs off, apologize, and pray he does not send this department into the Stone Age." Collier blinked. The words registered, but his ego refused to accept them. A SEAL, this guy. But he had already committed. He had the cuffs on. The crowd was filming. If he backed down now, he looked weak. In Collier's twisted worldview, weakness was worse than being wrong. I do not care if he is Captain America, Collier spat, shoving Darius toward the cruiser. He assaulted a police officer. He resisted arrest. He refused to identify himself. He is going to jail. Assault? Harlan asked, his face reddening with controlled rage. I was watching from my car, Sergeant. He did not touch you. You touched him. You escalated a consensual encounter into a civil rights violation because you did not like the way he looked. Tell it to the judge, Collier said, opening the back door of the cruiser. He grabbed Darius's head roughly and dramatically shoved him into the cramped plastic seat of the cage. Darius did not struggle. He locked eyes with Harlan through the window. Make the call, his eyes said. Harlan nodded once, a micro gesture of understanding. He pulled out his phone as Collier slammed the car door shut. You are making a mistake, son, Harlan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. A career-ending mistake, Collier laughed, walking around to the driver's side. My union rep will have this cleared up by lunch. Go home, Grandpa. Collier peeled away from the curb, sirens blaring unnecessarily for the short drive to the station. He wanted the spectacle. He wanted the town to see him cleaning up the streets. Inside the cruiser, the air conditioning blasted, but Darius sat in silence. Collier glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see fear or anger. Instead, he saw Darius leaning his head back against the cage, eyes closed, looking bored. Not so tough now, are you? Collier taunted. The military might let you get away with murder overseas, but here in Oakhaven, I am the general. Darius opened one eye. You have the right to remain silent, Sergeant. I suggest you use it. Everything you say is being recorded by your own dashcam. Collier slammed his hand on the dashboard, turning off the interior camera. Whoops, he smirked. Technical malfunction. That, Darius said calmly, is a felony. Tampering with evidence. It is my word against yours, Collier said, pulling into the police station's sally port. And I have got the badge. But as the garage door rolled down behind them, plunging them into the artificial light of the precinct, Collier had no idea that the war had already started. While he was driving, Admiral Harlan had made a phone call. He did not call the local police chief. He did not call the mayor. He called the Pentagon. The Oakhaven police station was a sterile building of cinder block and linoleum. Collier marched Darius through the back entrance, parading him past the booking desk. What do we have here, Wayne? Asked Officer Hayes, a younger cop sitting at the desk. Got a big fish, Collier bragged, tossing Darius's wallet onto the counter. Claims he is a Navy SEAL. Resisted arrest. Tried to break my wrist. Hayes picked up the wallet and looked at the ID. His eyes went wide. He looked at Darius, then back at the ID, then at Collier. Wayne, Hayes said, his voice hesitant. This is a DoD Common Access card, officer, Lieutenant Commander. Wayne, this guy is an 04. That is a commissioned officer. A high-ranking one. He is the suspect. Collier snapped. Book him? Fingerprints, mugshot, the works. Put him in the system so it ruins his clearance. Darius stood silently as they patted him down. They took his shoelaces. They took his belt. It was a ritual designed to strip a man of his dignity. But Darius had endured SEER school. Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. He had been waterboarded during training. He had been hunted in the mountains of Kandahar. Standing in a brightly lit room with a chubby, power-tripping cop was a vacation compared to a Tuesday in Afghanistan. Turn to the left, Collier barked, holding the camera for the mug shot. Darius turned, flash. Turn to the right. Darius turned, flash. Now sit. Collier shoved Darius into a metal chair in the holding cell. He did not uncuff him. He left him there, handcuffed behind his back, for an extended period. Collier sat just outside the cell, doing paperwork and whistling loudly. He was writing up the report, creatively editing the facts. Suspect assumed an aggressive stance. Suspect verbalized threats. Officer feared for his life. He was just finishing the paragraph about Darius lunging at him when the heavy steel door at the front of the precinct slammed open. It hit the wall with a deafening bang. The noise was so loud Collier dropped his pen. He spun around, expecting a drunk or a riot. Instead, he saw Chief of Police Larson. Chief Larson was a good man, usually calm, usually smiling. Right now, he looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. His face was pale and sweating profusely. His tie was loosened as if he could not breathe. And he was not alone. Behind him walked Admiral Gregory Harlan. And behind Harlan were two men in dark suits wearing earpieces. Federal agents. And behind them was a woman in a sharp blazer carrying a briefcase. Collier. Chief Larson screamed. It was not a call. It was a shriek of panic. Get out here now. Collier stood up, confused. Chief, I just processed it. Shut up. Larson roared, storming into the booking area. He looked at the holding cell. He saw Darius Freeman, still handcuffed, sitting calmly. Larson looked like he was about to have a stroke. He rushed to the cell door, fumbling with his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them twice before managing to unlock the door. What are you doing, Chief? Collier asked, stepping forward. That guy is dangerous. He assaulted me. Larson ignored him. He threw the cell door open and rushed to Darius. Commander Freeman, Larson said, his voice trembling, I am so sorry. Please, allow me. The chief of police personally unlocked the handcuffs. Darius rubbed his wrists, his expression unreadable. He stood up and looked at Collier. Chief, what is going on? Collier demanded, his face turning red. You are letting a perp walk. I have charges. I have a report. You do not have a report, Sergeant, said the woman with the briefcase, stepping forward. You have a resignation letter. Collier scoffed. Who are you? I am Sophia Reyes from the district attorney's office, she said coldly. And these gentlemen are from the FBI Civil Rights Division. Collier's knees felt weak. FBI, for a loitering stop. Admiral Gregory Harlan stepped forward, tapping his cane on the linoleum floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You did not just stop a loiterer, Sergeant Collier, Harlan said, his voice low and dangerous. You illegally detained a naval special warfare officer on active duty. You falsified a police report. We have the witnesses and the live stream your dashboard camera missed. And you deprived a United States serviceman of his civil rights under color of law. I did not know who he was, Collier stammered. He did not show ID. He tried. Darius spoke for the first time since entering the station. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of an executioner's axe. You told me you did not care. You told me you were the law. Darius walked out of the cell, rubbing his wrists. He stopped inches from Collier. You wanted to teach me a lesson about power, Wayne, Darius said. Consider school in session. Chief Larson turned to Collier. Badge, gun, now. Chief, come on. We go back a long time, Collier pleaded, sweat pouring down his face. It is just one mistake. Give me a suspension. Do not do this. I do not have a choice, Wayne, Larson yelled, pointing at the phone on the wall. Do you know who just called me? The governor. Do you know who called him? The Secretary of the Navy. You have brought a Category 5 hurricane down on this department. Give me the badge. Collier's hands shook as he unclipped his holster. He placed his Glock on the counter. Then, with trembling fingers, he unpinned the silver shield from his chest. You are suspended without pay pending an internal and federal investigation, Larson said. Get out of my station. I need a ride home, Collier whispered. Walk, Darius said. Collier looked up. You made me walk, Darius said, pointing to the door. Walk. Collier looked around the room. The other officers, men he had worked with for decades, would not meet his eyes. They were looking at their shoes, distancing themselves from the radioactive fallout. Defeated, Collier turned and walked toward the exit. He pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the sunlight. But if he thought the worst was over, he was wrong. because outside the station, the internet had arrived. When Wayne Collier pushed open the heavy steel doors of the Oak Haven police station, he was operating on muscle memory and denial. In his mind, this was a misunderstanding. He was a longtime veteran. He was the sheepdog. He expected to walk to his truck, drive home, drink a cold beer, and wait for the union rep to call him and tell him it was all going to go away. He did not just walk outside. He walked into an execution. The sidewalk, usually empty save for a few pigeons, was a sea of flashing lights and satellite trucks. It looked like the Super Bowl had descended on the quiet suburb. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and a dozen local affiliates had set up camp. As the doors swung shut behind him, the sound hit him like a physical blow, a cacophony of shutter clicks and shouted questions. Officer Collier, is it true you used a racial slur? Did you know he was a Navy SEAL? Why did you turn off your body camera? Collier recoiled, shielding his eyes against the strobe light effect of the camera flashes. He looked for a friendly face, a fellow officer, a bailiff, anyone. But the officers standing guard at the perimeter were looking straight ahead, their jaws set. They were not protecting him. They were containing the chaos he had caused. They would not even look him in the eye. He put his head down and aimed for his truck. A reporter from a national network, a woman he recognized from the nightly news, shoved a microphone over the police tape, nearly hitting him in the face. Mr. Collier, the governor has called your actions a stain on the badge. Do you have a comment for the millions of people watching this right now? No comment, Collier croaked. His voice sounded thin and weak. Get out of my way. He reached his truck, his beloved Ford F-250, the symbol of his masculinity. It was parked in the employee lot, but the lot was fenced with chain link, offering no privacy. He froze. Someone had gotten to it. The driver's side door had been keyed. Deep, jagged scratches cut through the clear coat and paint down to the primer. Scrawled into the metal in crude letters was a single word, tyrant, on the windshield. Someone had slapped a sticker, stolen valor detector. Collier's hands shook so violently he dropped his keys in the gravel. The cameras caught it. The crowd laughed, a cruel, jeering sound. He scrambled to pick them up, fumbling with the lock, throwing himself into the cab like a frightened animal scuttling into a hole. He locked the doors. He started the engine. He peeled out of the lot, his tires squealing, nearly clipping a cameraman in his haste. The digital tsunami. The drive home was a blur of paranoia. Every car behind him felt like it was following him. Every pedestrian on their phone felt like they were filming him. He stopped at a red light and made the mistake of pulling out his phone. He opened Twitter. It was a bloodbath. The hashtag #OAKHAVEN_tyrant was not just trending. It was the #1 topic in the world, above the president, above the Super Bowl. The video was everywhere. The full clip of him escalating the situation, sneering at Darius, twisting the arm of a compliant man. But it was the commentary that destroyed him. Look at this guy. Classic peaked in high school energy. He messed with the wrong one. That calmness from the SEAL, that is what a real warrior looks like. Collier looks like a terrified bully. I went to high school with Wayne Collier. He used to steal lunch money. Glad to see he has not changed. Then the doxing began. In the replies to a popular tweet, someone had posted a Google Maps screenshot. Here is his address. 42 Maplewood Drive. Go say hi. Collier threw the phone onto the passenger seat as if it were burning hot. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. They knew where he lived. The empty fortress. He turned onto Maplewood Drive. Usually this was his sanctuary, a manicured lawn, a 2-story colonial, an American flag waving on the porch. Now there were news vans parked on his grass. He did not pull into the driveway. He drove over the curb, through his own flower bed, and into the garage, hitting the remote closer before the door had even cleared the roof of his truck. The garage door slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. He sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, waiting for his breathing to slow. It did not. "Laura," he called out, opening the door into the kitchen. "Laura, I am home. It is a mess out there. You will not believe." The house was silent. Not the silence of a quiet afternoon, but the heavy, dead silence of abandonment. "Laura, girls." He walked into the kitchen. The refrigerator was bereft of the usual drawings his daughters made. The counter was cleared of the mail pile. On the island there was a single sheet of paper. Next to it was his wedding ring. Collier picked up the ring first. It felt light. Then he read the note. "Rick, my sister saw the video. Then my mother saw it. Then the girls saw it on TikTok. Jenny came home crying because the kids at school showed her the video of her father kneeling on a black man's neck. They called her a racist. She is 12, Rick. She is 12. And she is ashamed of her last name. I cannot do this. I cannot defend this. I took the girls to my mother's in Ohio. Do not come. Do not call. You loved that badge more than you ever loved us. Now you can have it. Lavra." Collier crumpled the note in his fist. He sank to the floor, his back against the dishwasher. He wanted to scream, to break something, to blame Darius Freeman for ruining his life. But deep down, in the pit of his stomach, he knew. Darius had not done this. Laura had not done this. He had done this. The Union betrayal. The following morning, the final pillar of his life collapsed. Collier had spent the night sitting in the dark, watching the headlights of news vans sweep across his living room curtains. His phone rang. It was Big Mike Henderson, the union representative for the Oak Haven Police Benevolent Association. Mike was the guy who made dues disappear. Mike was the guy who fixed excessive force complaints. Mike was the fixer. "Mike," Collier said, clutching the phone like a lifeline. "Thank God. Listen, you got to get these reporters off my lawn and tell the chief I need." Mike interrupted. His voice was cold, businesslike. "Stop. What do you mean stop? I am calling to inform you that the union board voted late last night. We are withdrawing your legal counsel representation, effective immediately." Collier blinked, confused. "You cannot do that. I pay my dues. You have to defend me." "We defend officers who act within the scope of their duties," Mike said. "We viewed the body cam footage, Wayne. The footage you tried to delete. The audio log. That was not police work. That was a personal vendetta. You went rogue. It was a stressful stop. I feared for my safety." "He was drinking coffee, Wayne," Mike snapped, losing his composure for a second. "He was a lieutenant commander in the SEALs and you treated him like a stray dog. You made us all look like garbage. The National FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, has disavowed you. We are not spending a dime of the pension fund to keep your ass out of prison." "Mike, please. They are going to charge me. I need a lawyer." "Then you better sell that truck," Mike said, "because you are going to need a private attorney. And Wayne, do not come to the lodge anymore. You are not welcome." The line went dead. The hammer drops. Collier spent the days that followed in a haze of alcohol and terror. He drank the cheap whiskey he kept in the cabinet. He watched the news, masochistically soaking in his own destruction. He saw Darius Freeman giving a press conference. Darius looked regal, standing next to Victor Langston, the most feared civil rights attorney in the state. "We are not just seeking damages," Langston was saying to the cameras. "We are seeking justice. We are coming for the pension. We are coming for the assets. And we are coming for Mr. Collier's liberty." Soon after, the doorbell rang. It was not a reporter. It was not a pizza delivery prank. Collier looked through the peephole. He saw two men in dark suits. They wore earpieces. They did not look like local cops. They looked like accountants who carried guns. "FBI." Collier opened the door. He was wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. He had not shaved in days. He smelled of bourbon and fear. "Richard Collier?" the lead agent asked. He held up a badge. I am Special Agent Vance, Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Yeah, Collier whispered. We have a warrant for your arrest, Vance said, his voice devoid of emotion. Please step out onto the porch and turn around. What? What are the charges? Deprivation of rights under color of law, witness tampering, perjury, and federal false statement charges. Collier stepped out. The morning sun was blinding. As Agent Vance slapped the handcuffs on, standard steel cuffs, not the zip ties they used for mass arrests, Collier looked across the street. His neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, was watering his lawn. Henderson used to wave to Collier every morning. He used to say, "Keep us safe out there, Wayne." Henderson saw Collier in cuffs. He saw the FBI agents. Henderson did not wave. He just shook his head, turned his back, and continued watering his petunias. Collier was shoved into the back of the unmarked sedan. As the car pulled away, leaving his foreclosed life behind, he realized the terrifying truth. The badge was gone. The gun was gone. The fear he used to inspire was gone. Now he was just a criminal. And he was heading into a system he had spent his career filling with people who hated him. The federal courthouse in the district capital looked less like a building of law and more like a tomb. For Wayne Collier, that is exactly what it was. Some time had passed since the incident in Liberty Park. In that time, Collier's life had dissolved with terrifying speed. He had been suspended without pay, but he had clung to the hope that the blue wall of silence, the unspoken code among officers to protect their own, would save him. He expected the union to bully the DA. He expected the evidence to get lost. But when the FBI gets involved, the blue wall turns into a chain-link fence. Collier arrived at the courthouse in a cheap, ill-fitting suit he had bought at a discount store. His custom-tailored uniforms were seized as evidence. His wife, Laura, was not there holding his hand. She had filed for divorce weeks prior, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full custody of their 2 daughters. She did not want the girls associated with the name that was now a national synonym for bigotry. As Collier walked up the granite steps, he had to push through a gauntlet of reporters. There were no friendly faces, no supporters holding back blue signs. Even the police stationed at the perimeter turned their backs on him as he passed. He was a pariah. Inside, Courtroom 4B was packed to capacity. The air conditioning hummed, but the room felt suffocatingly hot. Collier took his seat at the defense table next to a court-appointed public defender named Greg Sauer. Sauer looked tired and disinterested. He knew this was a losing battle. Across the aisle, the prosecution table looked like a war room. The assistant U.S. attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Sophia Reyes, was arranging her files with surgical precision. Beside her sat Victor Langston, the shark of a civil rights attorney representing Darius in the parallel civil suit. But what made Collier's blood run cold was the gallery. In the front row sat Admiral Gregory Harlan, upright and unmoving as a statue. Next to him was Darius Freeman. Darius wore a tailored navy suit that fit his muscular frame perfectly. He did not look angry. He looked serene. Behind them were 6 men. They were diverse in appearance, beards, long hair, different races, but they all shared the same dangerous stillness. They sat with their arms crossed, staring directly at Collier. It was Darius's SEAL platoon. They had flown in on their own dime to watch the operator, who tried to humiliate their brother, get dismantled. The smoking gun. The trial moved with brutal efficiency. The prosecution did not need theatrics. They had facts. They called the neighbors who saw the stop. They called the teenagers who filmed the arrest. But the nail in the coffin came when the prosecution called Dr. Elias Thorne, a digital forensics expert from the FBI. Dr. Thorne, the prosecutor began, pacing before the jury. Mr. Collier claims that his body camera malfunctioned at the exact moment the physical altercation began. Is that consistent with your findings? No, Thorne said, adjusting his glasses. The log files indicate a manual shutdown. Mr. Collier pressed the power button for 3 seconds, so the camera was off. The video feed was terminated, Thorne corrected. However, the model of body camera used by the Oak Haven PD has a fail-safe feature known as pre-event buffering and post-event audio lag. Essentially, it captures 30 seconds of video before activation and keeps the microphone hot for 2 minutes after improper shutdown to prevent evidence tampering. Collier froze. He felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at his lawyer, Sauer, who just shrugged. "You did not tell me that," Sauer's eyes seemed to say. "And did you recover audio from that hot mic period?" "We did." "Please play Exhibit G for the jury." The courtroom went silent. Then the speakers crackled with the sound of Collier's heavy breathing and the slam of a car door. "Not so tough now, are you?" Collier's voice rang out, dripping with arrogance. "The military might let you get away with murder overseas, but here in Oak Haven, I am the general." The jury shifted uncomfortably. Collier stared at the table, refusing to look up. Then came the rustling of fabric and a whisper that sealed his fate. "Whoops. Technical malfunction. No video. No case." A collective gasp swept through the room. One juror, an older woman in the back row, shook her head in visible disgust. Collier had confessed to tampering with evidence on his own recording device. The cross-examination. When Collier took the stand in his own defense, it was a desperate Hail Mary. He tried to cry. He tried to talk about the stress of the job, the fear of the unknown. "I just wanted to make sure the neighborhood was safe," Collier sobbed, wiping his nose. He was a big guy. He looked threatening. Victor Langston stood up for the cross-examination. He did not shout. He walked over to the witness stand and rested his hand on the railing, looking at Collier like a specimen in a jar. "Mr. Collier," Langston said smoothly, "you said Commander Freeman looked threatening. You described him as agitated in your initial report. Is that correct?" "Yes," Collier sniffed. "And yet," Langston pointed to the large screen where the teenager's cell phone footage was paused. "In this video, Commander Freeman is sitting down. His legs are crossed. He is holding a cup of coffee. At what point does a seated man drinking a latte constitute a lethal threat?" "He had a look in his eye," Collier stammered. "A defiance." "Defiance?" Langston pounced. "Is defiance a crime, Mr. Collier? Is hurting your feelings a felony in the state of Virginia?" "No, but he refused to identify himself." "Which is his legal right," Langston snapped. "You know the law, do you not? Or were you absent the day they taught the Fourth Amendment at the Academy?" Collier's face turned red. The anger, the same anger that caused this mess, started to bubble up. "I am the law on that street," Collier shouted, slamming his hand on the witness stand. "When I say jump, he should jump. I do not care if he is a SEAL or the Pope." Langston smiled. It was the smile of a hunter who had just watched the prey walk into the trap. "No further questions, Your Honor." The verdict. The jury deliberated for less than an hour and a half. When they returned, they did not look at Collier. "We, the jury," the foreman announced, his voice steady, "find the defendant, Richard Collier, guilty on all counts. Guilty of deprivation of rights under color of law. Guilty of falsifying police records. Guilty of assault. Guilty of perjury." Judge Rebecca Klein, a woman known for her icy demeanor, peered over her reading glasses at Collier. "Richard Collier, please stand." Collier stood. His legs felt like jelly. He gripped the table to keep from collapsing. "You have disgraced your uniform," Judge Klein said, her voice echoing in the silence. "You took a position of public trust and weaponized it to stroke your own ego. You targeted a man who has done more for this country in a single day than you have done in your entire life. And when you were caught, you lied. As for the federal charges, I sentence you to 10 years in a federal correctional institution. There will be no possibility of parole." Collier let out a strangled sob. 10 years. Furthermore, the judge continued, shifting her papers, in the matter of the civil suit, Freeman versus Collier, due to the finding of malicious intent, the court rules that qualified immunity does not apply. You are personally liable. The court awards the plaintiff $4.5 million in punitive damages. The court orders the immediate seizure of all personal assets to satisfy this judgment. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. The fallout. The karma that hit Wayne Collier was not just a legal slap on the wrist. It was a total dismantling of his existence. 2 days after the sentencing, the U.S. Marshals arrived at Collier's home. He was not there. He was already in a holding cell, but his estranged wife was there to collect the last of her things. She watched from the driveway as the marshals placed seizure tags on everything. They took the boat he had bought on credit. They took the collection of antique firearms he was so proud of. Then they came for the truck. It was a Ford F-250, lifted, with custom rims and a thin blue line decal on the back window. It was Collier's pride and joy. It was his identity. A tow truck backed into the driveway, hooked it up, and dragged it away to be sold at a police auction. The money would go directly to Darius Freeman's charity. The house was foreclosed upon immediately. The bank accounts were frozen and drained. But the worst part came when Collier was transferred to the FCA Petersburg low-security prison. He was processed in like any other inmate. He was stripped naked, sprayed for lice, and given a beige jumpsuit that was to sizes too small. He was given a number. He was no longer Sergeant Collier. He was inmate 49201-083. As he was walked to his cell block, the reality of his situation set in. He was a former cop in a federal prison. He would have to be placed in protective custody, solitary confinement, for his own safety. He would spend nearly the entire day in a concrete box the size of a parking space. There would be no audience for him here. No one to bully. No one to intimidate. He was the smallest man in the building. The final lesson. A week later, Darius Freeman stood in the center of the newly renamed Harlan Freeman Youth Center in downtown Oak Haven. The building, formerly a dilapidated warehouse, was now gleaming with fresh paint. It had a boxing gym, a computer lab, and a library. The $4.5 million judgment had paid for all of it. Darius stood by the entrance, watching kids stream in, kids who looked like him, kids who used to be afraid to walk through the park. Admiral Gregory Harlan walked up beside him, leaning on his cane. "You could have kept the money, you know," Harlan said quietly. "Bought a nice house in the Caribbean." Darius shook his head. "Blood money, Admiral. I do not want it." Collier wanted to take something from this community. "I made sure he gave back instead. He is in solitary," Harlan noted, writing letters to the governor, begging for a pardon. "He will not get it," Darius said, his voice flat. "He is right where he belongs." Darius looked out the glass doors. He saw a police cruiser roll by. The officer inside was a new hire, a woman. She slowed down as she passed the center, smiled, and gave a respectful wave to the kids playing out front. Darius waved back. The war was over. The predator had been removed from the ecosystem, and the balance was restored. Darius turned his back on the street and walked into the gym, where a group of young men were waiting for their boxing lesson. He was not a victim. He was not a target. He was a commander, and he had work to do. And that is how the story ends. Wayne Collier thought his badge gave him the right to judge, harass, and destroy. He thought Darius Freeman was just another victim he could trample on. But he learned the hard way that when you judge a book by its cover, sometimes you open a chapter you cannot close. Darius did not just win a court case. He dismantled a bully's entire life without ever throwing a punch. It is a powerful reminder. True strength is not about how loud you yell or how much force you use. True strength is composure, dignity, and the truth. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs to see a bully get what they deserve. And do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a new story. I will see you in the next one. Stay safe and stay strong.